I've now finished my trellis. It's okay. There's a couple of more rectangle-y like areas. This one particularly standing out, and you can see that the threads are quite movable, even the ones below. You can still move around. And what can happen whilst you're stitching is that the threads do get moved. So if you ever think that you've ended up with more of a rectangle than a square, it might just be because your stitches have shifted whilst you're stitching them. But the next thing to do, because these stitches are so overlong and unstable, is to tie them down. Now, for the purposes of the video, I've gone with a contrasting thread so you can see what I'm doing, but you could use a matching thread. You don't have to use something different. There is a multitude of different ways that you can catch this down. The most simple and basic way is to just make a stitch across the join. So everywhere that the stitches cross over, we're going to put down a stitch. And it can be as simple as discreet as what you can see there, just something very small that sits over the top of where they cross. Now, the thing you have to look out for when you're doing this is that you keep your stitches going in the same direction, unless you are deliberately making a pattern, and then you have to be consistent in your pattern. But also, don't bring your thread or needle up too close, because you can actually move your thread out of the way. You can see there with the action of the needle, that thread will move when I pull my blue thread over the top of it. So what I want to do there is just move my needle out just a touch. So my stitch will be slightly bigger, but my threads are less likely to shift around. And whilst I'm doing this, I am also trying to keep my stitches consistent in length as well. So I'm going to put in a couple of rows of this so that I've got the example. Generally speaking, what you would do is choose a way of tying this down and sticking to it. I'm going to sample a couple of different patterns, because you can put in 2 stitches, you can put a long stitch and a short stitch, all of this kind of thing. So I'm going to play with that for a little bit, trying to do at least 2 rows of everything. And I might even throw in a few different fibres as well. So I've just made a classic mistake in that I probably should have cast off down here where I could get closer to my paint line. Casting off in my grid, I'm unlikely to hide my threads, and the best place for me now to do it is up here, which is a distance that is probably just a little bit too far. So that's a lesson that I need to think about in future when I'm planning on catching down my trellis. I need to look at how much thread I have left and how far it can get me closest to my next paint line, so that I don't have to trail my thread such a long distance.